Welcome back to B.Hooked Crochet. I'm your host Brittany, and welcome to pattern number 2 of the 4-part Tunisian Crochet washcloth series sponsored by Clover USA. With the launch of their new interchangeable Tunisian hook set, we're celebrating with 4 washcloth patterns. Each pattern will give you the chance to use your new Clover Tunisian hooks, learn some new Tunisian crochet stitches, and make something practical in the process. If you're following along with the series between August 13th and September 24th, 2017, head over to bhookedcrochet.com/washcloth series to enter to win an interchangeable Tunisian hook set straight from Clover. You can find that link right here on your screen in the top right corner. You'll find the giveaway sign-up form and the details to the giveaway near the bottom of that page. All right, now let's get started on washcloth number 2. We're going to begin the second washcloth in our series by creating a slip knot and a foundation chain of 30 stitches. Now, even though we're using the same hook and the same size yarn, we do have to make our foundation just slightly smaller because of the stitch pattern that we're using for this particular washcloth. The stitches are a little bit more loose than the first, and so we have to adjust the gauge a little bit here. So that way all of the washcloths in our set are about the same size. So go ahead and make a chain with 30. So your foundation chain should have 30 chains in it. Then once you have your 30 chains, we're going to pull up a loop into every single stitch. Every chain. So I'm working in the back bump of the chain. That's a personal preference of mine, but you could go into the 2 side loops here if you would like. So you would catch the side loop and the back bump. Both of these will work out really well for you, just whatever's comfortable. And as you're pulling up the loops in the chains, you want to make sure that you leave your tension just a little bit loose. You see how the stitches are sliding up and down the hook? That's something that you want to happen. You don't want it to be too loose because then your stitches will be a little sloppy. But if you make them too tight and you can't slide them up and down your hook, it will really make for an unpleasant experience. Once you have a loop pulled up into every single chain, you should have a total of 30 loops on your hook. You want to double check that and make sure you're on the right track before you begin your return pass. So the return pass for this pattern is the same as the previous pattern in our series, and that is we start off by making a yarn over and pull through that first loop. So basically we've just created a chain there, and from here on out we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Now it's easier if you slide the loops up your hook, then you can get it through. And as you go, this is a really easy place to sort of goof up or make a mistake if you're not paying attention, and you can decrease your stitch count by 1. So as you yarn over and pull through 2 loops, if you just stop for a second and take a look and make sure that you have 2 loops on there, that's how you'll know you'll be on the right track. It's really easy to accidentally pull through a 3rd one, and like I said, when you do that, you will decrease by 1 stitch. So once you've completed your foundation row, which we've just done here, we're going to move on to row number 1. And this pattern has just a 1 row repeat. So we're just going to repeat this row over and over until we finish our washcloth. And it's delightfully simple. We're going to start off with a chain 2. And if you're familiar with regular crochet, we're chaining 2 because we're going to use a stitch that's more tall than normal. So we need to account for the height difference of the stitch that we're going to use. So we'll locate our first bar, our first stitch right here. That's where we need to work our first stitch, and we're going to do so with a yarn over. So yarn over your hook first. insert your hook into the bar. So just from one side to the other, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Now we'll repeat that across the row. We'll yarn over, find the next bar, insert your hook in just the front leg of that bar, yarn over and pull through 2. So you might be thinking, if you are familiar with regular crochet, you might be thinking, well, hey, we're actually doing double crochets. And that is basically true. So if we were working a double crochet with regular crochet, just a normal crochet hook, not Tunisian style, we would yarn over and pull through 2 twice. But because we're working Tunisian, we need that loop to stay on our hook in order to keep that stitch live to work off later. But this stitch is called the Tunisian double crochet. And you can do a lot of really fun things with this stitch. You can see here, based on where we're inserting it, it looks like we have a row of simple stitch below it. And that's just how the stitch is worked into the bar. It's pulling it up in a way that makes it look like a simple stitch. But you could work this stitch in other places as well. So the place you would enter your hook for the Tunisian knit stitch, that's going to give it a slightly different appearance than if you inserted it into the place where you would work a Tunisian full stitch. So lots of really neat things you can do with the stitch. The other part that I really like about it is that it gives you a nice framework for a washcloth. It still is going to be a pretty tightly woven material, but the bars in the double crochet are going to act as little scrubbers. So the easiest place to mess up here with this stitch pattern is if you forget to yarn over and pull through 2. So you see I've worked half of my stitch here and I have 2 loops on my hook. If we were just to leave that there, we would increase our stitch count by 1 because we have that little yarn over there. And if we do that enough times, then it will be noticeable enough to alter the sides of our work, so it will sort of fan out. So keep that in mind. It's always a good idea to count every few rows just to make sure you have the same stitch count as when you started. And when you get to the end of your row, you'll locate your chain. And we're going to yarn over and double crochet into it just like we've been doing for all of the other stitches. But you do want to make sure you catch 2 loops to that chain. So the front loop and the back bump. So that completes the forward pass of row 1, and we'll move on to the return pass. Nothing new here, guys. We're just going to yarn over and pull through the first loop on our hook, and then yarn over and pull through 2 all the way down to the end of our row. So once you finish that return pass, your work looks something like this. We have our first row where we can clearly see the posts from the double crochets, and we have our framework to start row 2. So as I mentioned earlier, the repeat for this washcloth is really simple. We're just going to make 1 Tunisian double crochet stitch into every stitch across the row. We need to make sure we begin each row with a chain 2. That's to account for the height. So we'll chain 2, and remember, as you're working each stitch, you're going to go in the bar as if to do the Tunisian simple stitch. So just like we covered in that previous washcloth. And you want to remember to yarn over and pull through 2 at the end of your stitch. And those are the main takeaways. You're going to work this repeat 10 more times. So we need to have a total of 11 rows of double crochet. And what I like to do is just count the posts. So you can see here I have 1 post that was from the first row. The second post is going to be for the second row. And you'll count up when you have a total of 11 double crochet rows, then we're ready to bind off on this pattern. So you're going to work the forward pass of row 11, you'll work the return pass of row 11, and that's where we'll pick up in the next section. I'll show you the really simple bind off for this washcloth, and we'll be well on our way and halfway through the series. So once you've worked 11 rows of Tunisian double crochet, your washcloth should look something like this. And the first thing you can notice is that bias, right? So yes, this is a stitch pattern that does sort of allow for a lean, that Tunisian crochet lean, and that's okay. We'll wet block at the end of this to correct that. The bind off is really just as simple as working the stitch pattern. So we are going to chain 2 at the beginning of this row. We'll yarn over and work our double crochet, our Tunisian double crochet in that bar. So still nothing new here. Yarn over and pull through 2. And then we're going to just take that loop and pull it through this loop. And that's going to fasten things off. So we'll repeat that again. Work that Tunisian double crochet. Get through there. There we go. Then we'll pull this loop through that loop. And that'll bind off that stitch. And that's the repeat for this row. We're just going to bind off each stitch until we get to the end. Now our last stitch is no different than the rest. We're going to work our hook into those 2 loops of that chain, yarn over and pull through 2, and then pull that loop through the loop that was on our hook. And that's going to finish the bind off. We can go ahead and trim our tail that's leaving a few inches long. That way we have something to weave in. And we'll just take that tail and pull it through the loop on our hook to fasten off. Now the next thing we want to do is thread our tail on our darning needle. We'll turn our work over to the back. And my personal preference of weaving in ends for this stitch is right along this ridge here. You can sort of see that line. That's where I'm going to work it in, but I got to get it down to that point. So I'll just work it into this side post here and then work it under the base of that stitch. And then I can go ahead and work my needle around. So you can, if you can get it to work out for you, you can typically just weave your needle from one little bump to the next. You can usually catch 3 or 4 at a time. Or if you can't get that to work, just take it one at a time. Now once you've worked in one direction for a little while, it's always a good idea to work back in the other direction. Now you don't want to go through the same loops because you'll undo what you just did. So I like to find just the next row below and just weave in the end, just sort of conceal them within these loops of the stitches. Once you feel like it's nice and secure, you can just trim the tail. And then, of course, weave in the last end. The last thing I recommend doing for your washcloth is to wet block. Now, we don't really have to make up for any wobbly edges, or if you have some tension issues, blocking is definitely going to help a little bit with that. The main goal for blocking this one is just to correct this bias that we see here. So when you pin it down, I would recommend keeping it at one side. We don't really want to stretch it too much because then we'll stretch it too big and it won't match the rest of our washcloths. So you'll really just put your guides here up at the top. And then when you pin the rest of it down, that's when you really want to force this side to come in and force this side to go out. Now you'll saturate it with water once you get everything pinned down, and it's best if you let it dry overnight or even 2 nights if you can wait that long. Now, if you do need a little bit more guidance on blocking your project, I have a really helpful post for that. You can find that at bhookedcrochet.com/blockyourproject. I'll link to that as well, so you can just have easy access to that. It covers wet blocking, finger blocking, steam blocking, pretty much every different type of blocking, so you can check that out. Also, if you haven't done so already, we're now in the second pattern of the washcloth series by Clover, and I want to remind you about the giveaway that's going on. So if you've been admiring the hooks that I'm using, well, Clover is giving away the entire set to one lucky winner. Now you have to participate throughout this series in order to be eligible to win, but all you have to do is go to bhookedcrochet.com/washcloth series. I'll link to that as well, so you can just click on it or copy and paste in your browser. That is the page that houses the first pattern. Well, if you scroll down to the bottom of that page, that's where you'll find the sign up form for this contest or this giveaway. And at the end of the series, so after we've finished up the 4th pattern, again, this is pattern number 2, then I will select one random winner to win, and I will contact them via email. And at that point, they have to send me a picture of all 4 completed washcloths. And if they can do that, then they will be the winner of this beautiful set from Clover. You can see some pictures of that on that page as well. It's a nice canvas set. It comes with an entire package of crochet hooks. So you'll have every size you need. You'll have different size cords so you can work different projects. So definitely check that out, okay? If you're working on this in real time, it's before September 24th of 2017. Don't miss the chance to win this set. It's about a $120 value. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this pattern. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can direct them to the website. That is bhookedcrochet.com/washcloth2, the number 2, washcloth 2. Okay, that's going to be where you'll find the written instructions for this pattern. If you scroll down to the bottom of that page, you can leave your questions and comments there. All right, I've had a lot of fun with this pattern. I will see you in the next video. We'll release that in 2 weeks from today. And I look forward to seeing you on the other side.